Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you. Um, I trust that you had a great Mother's Day. As we still have folks coming in, we're up to 55 participants, which I think is great. We have a lot of good information for you and absolutely opportunities to ask and hopefully answer all of your questions in the allotted time that we have. Again, this informational session is for the Board of Pensions. My name is Mike Kremnitzer, and I'm the Director of Benefits and HR for the conference. And it's my privilege to be your host today for this informational session. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. My hope is that by the end of our time together, that you'll have a really good understanding of the legislation that's before you. With me are a few folks that I'd like to take a minute and welcome and also introduce, because you might be hearing from them throughout this session. First is Anna Giozzi, and Anna is the chair for the Board of Pensions. I see on my screen Bill Brownson, and Bill is our CFO and our Director of Administration. I'm not sure if Peter Hang from Westpath is going to be on this call, but Peter Hang is our client relationship manager, and we work very closely with Peter. And also from Westpath, we have Kelly Wittick, and Kelly is the Director of Health and Wellbeing for the benefit plans. What I'd like to do now, just briefly, is help frame our conversation so we can be good stewards of our limited time together. You know, if you've studied the recommendation, you know that it's a comprehensive and complex document. It's only 4 pages or so, but the font's got to be about a 6. I mean, it's small, and there's a lot of information packed into that document. The good news, and something that I want you to understand right in the beginning, is the good news is the vast majority of the information contained within the legislation has been approved each annual conference for years. Pension, disability, active health insurance, and billing for those benefits hasn't changed. Annuity rates for surviving spouses, moving reimbursement for retiring clergy, EAP eligibility also haven't changed. For these items and many more, this year represents a roll forward. However, we do, as you can tell from the slide on your screen already, we do have a couple pieces of legislation that I would like to pull from the recommendation and emphasize. First, we are moving retiree healthcare from the current Humana Medicare Advantage group plan to an individual health reimbursement account, or HRA, administered by VIA Benefits. The second piece of legislation is a 2% increase in the past service rate for pre-82 years of service. Let's start with the retiree healthcare transition, as it has a broader impact than the past service rate increase. To help those who may not have much experience with retiree HRAs, I've asked Kelly Wittick, who I introduced earlier from Westpath, to give us an overview of what it is, how it works, and what some of the advantages that it can offer to our retirees. Kelly, the virtual podium is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, everybody, for letting me join you here today in your preparations for annual conference. As Mike said, my name is Kelly Wittick, and I oversee the health and wellness benefits at Westpath. And we were really excited to share some of the details about this VIA benefits offering with the Board of Pensions in West Ohio, and I'm excited to share them with you today. Mike, shall I just tell you or tell Tim when to advance the slide? You guys can go ahead and advance it.
You can tell Tim when to advance it, Kelly.
Okay, Tim, go ahead and advance, please. Wonderful. So as you heard Mike share, the proposal is to replace the current Medicare Advantage plan with this program through Willis Towers Watson's program VIA Benefits. So Willis Towers Watson purchased VIA Benefits several years back. And what this offers is access for each retiree and spouse to thousands of different individual Medicare supplement products. and Medicare Advantage plans, and then to give you a health reimbursement account. And I will go into more detail about that, but it is important to share that they are individual Medicare plans that are offered through this arrangement, and then you have a health reimbursement account to help you pay for that. So go ahead and advance to the next slide, please. So VIA Benefits is really a great partner when it comes to this. They are the biggest group that does this in the industry, and WestPath has been partnering with them since 2012 for this offering. At the time, they were called Extend Health, and then they changed to One Exchange, and now they are VIA Benefits. So they've changed names a couple of times, but it's been the same core leaders. It's been the same program since 2012 when we first implemented our first 2 annual conferences. The advantages are that it allows you to choose from a wide variety of individual plans in the local market. So somebody asked at the beginning, is this licensed in Ohio, or is this licensed in another state? And the variety of healthcare plans from which you choose are licensed in the state that the individual resides in. They also have these licensed benefit advisors that are really lifetime benefit advisors. And so even like whether it's during the first transition or years after, these benefit advisors can help individual retirees and their spouses determine what the best fit for them is when it comes to an individual market plan. And then the annual conference is able to offset the cost of those individual plans through a health reimbursement account, or HRA. And through the entire process, VIA Benefits has great communications, both paper-based, they'll do outreach calls, they have a great website. So regardless of how you best learn and are best communicated with, there are options. And like I said, we've been doing this with VIA Benefits since 2012 here at WestPath. And so we have a great relationship and a great history of groups that have gone before West Ohio. Can I have you change the slide, please? This just kind of shares a highlight of what we've done over the last almost decade that WestPath has been partnering with VIA Benefits. So we've had 32 plan sponsors. The vast majority of them are annual conferences. I think about 4 of them are UMC organizations that are not annual conferences. But so there's, high 20s other annual conferences that have gone this way before you, over 9,000 individuals that we've transitioned. And what I think is super interesting about this, and I like to share, is of those 9,000 people, they've chosen over 1,000 different plans across over 100 different carriers. So that really just underscores the amount of choice and flexibility that this program has for folks. And it reminds me that, there's no way that WestPath could offer 1,000 different plans or 100 different partnerships with carriers, which is what makes this VIA Benefits offering so unique. Next slide, please. So the reason that we saw annual conferences back in 2012 start moving in this direction, and why we've seen the other, 20 plus follow suit, is really this offering is beneficial both for individuals, so individual retirees and their spouses, as well as for the annual conference. So over on the left side, we see choice and flexibility. And that's what I shared with the prior slide, is there's so many different choices that retirees and their spouses can choose from. It really gives you the flexibility to choose a plan that aligns with the individual's needs. And a participant and spouse can have very different needs, and they can be in different plans. And on the conference side, this is often a more cost-effective and sustainable solution. So the fixed dollar amount that the conference puts in the health reimbursement accounts, it over time allows them to be better stewards of those retiree healthcare dollars than it does being in a group plan. And all this while potentially having the retirees themselves be able to save money. So I think that's kind of the why so many groups have gone this way before you. And I will share that although, sometimes folks are nervous about the transition, I think we're always nervous about transitions. The groups that we've transitioned to VIA Benefits over the years, the retirees, the conferences have been very happy after the fact. Next slide, please. And I should pause and just say, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or ask me. I'm happy to answer them. I know this well enough that if you have a question during, it won't throw me off. So I shared that there are just a wide variety of options when it comes to plans. These are just some of the examples of the different Medicare Advantage, Medicare Supplement, Part D, dental, vision plan partners that Via Benefits has access to. Now, if you don't see who you prefer, I know that don't necessarily think that this is an exhausted list. Remember, I said that there were over 100 different vendor partners, but this just kind of gives you a snapshot of those big names that you may hear on television or radio. Via Benefits likely has partnerships with many or most of those. Next slide, please. So Medicare exchanges, which that's what this really is, and exchange is a funny term, and it means different things for Medicare versus non-Medicare eligible individuals. But Medicare exchanges are different than, the Affordable Care Act exchange or any other exchange for active individuals. And that's because the Medicare risk pool is huge. It's growing, more and more people are retiring. And so this is a really big risk pool that allows these plans to be very competitive when it comes to price. Also, when you have a special enrollment period, which includes this transition that West Ohio is making, it also is when somebody retires or becomes eligible for Medicare for the first time. So during those special enrollment periods, you're guaranteed to be issued a policy. So you don't have to worry about pre-existing conditions or being underwritten during those special enrollment periods. You can get, the same price as anybody else your age and gender. And because of the way that works, the carriers, the only way they can compete is based on price. And that creates quite a competitive market. Next slide, please. So again, this allows the conference to really control their costs and how much they're spending on retiree medical, which really makes it more viable for the long term if the conference wants to be able to continue to provide this benefit. Making it as sustainable and cost effective as possible is ideal. And also hopefully allows individuals to have their personal needs met, because all individuals have very different medical needs, very different financial needs. You can choose a plan that makes the most sense for your family, and then you can change that plan annually if that's what is necessary. Next slide, please. So here is how it works. If we start over on the left side, the individual retiree and their spouse have a phone call or go online. They can do either one, and they choose a plan. And they do that with support from that Via Benefits licensed benefit advisor. And that licensed benefit advisor is licensed in the state that the individuals live in, no matter what state they live in. So you might get a different advisor depending on what state you are currently residing in. So once the individual chooses a plan, then that individual is responsible directly to pay that insurance premium. And so that would be for a Medicare supplement plan or a Medicare Advantage plan like you have today. But Via Benefits can set up an auto pay option. So, yes, there's some setup required. And that's what I said, that sometimes the transition, it feels like, oh gosh, can I do this? But you can do this. And Via Benefits helps, including by setting up this auto pay option. And then Via Benefits reimburses the premium that was paid through the health reimbursement account funds. And there's also an auto reimbursement option available for that. So it can be a very nice little cycle where, the premium automatically comes out of a checking account or a credit card, and then the information goes right to Via Benefits, who's then able to deposit those HRA funds right back in the checking account. Once it gets set up, it can be a very smooth process. And then, you have your card, you've chosen your plan, individual goes, receives health services, give them the card, give them your Medicare card, you pay the provider directly. If you still have money left in your HRA, you can also submit those claims for reimbursement from the HRA as well, and that's a manual process. So the HRA funds are contributed by West Ohio Conference, and the conference and the Board of Pensions has a plan for how much money people get based on eligibility and years of service. But this is kind of how the overall process works with Via Benefits. It's different than what you have today, but like I said, there's a lot of support from Via Benefits to make sure that it goes well. Next slide, please. Just to briefly kind of reiterate what the enrollment experience looks like. So an individual figures out what their needs are, and they might be able to do that on their own. They might need some support from Via Benefits. There's a website that, kind of allows you to input information if that's a way that an individual likes to gather information. They also send a very nice packet to the home that, allows you to kind of gather the information you need in terms of who your doctor is, what medications you take, and any financial needs. Also, whether, you have maybe 2 different places that you live. If you go somewhere else in the winter, you might have different needs than somebody who's always in the same zip code. And then you have the opportunity to discuss the options with the licensed benefit advisor. If you do not put together one, piece of paper or online, experience with the, your medications and doctors, the benefit advisor will walk you through that. So you don't have to do the prep work in advance. I share here that the call length is unlimited. Certainly the more people gather in advance, the shorter the calls are, but they are long calls because we want to make sure that they address all of the needs and questions that retirees and their spouses have. And then the retiree and spouse each select a plan and enroll in it. The VIA benefits advisor then transfers the call to an enrollment specialist who basically fills out the application on your behalf. And so it's a very smooth, seamless process that makes sure that individuals get enrolled in the plan that's right for them. Next slide, please. I want to share that the benefit advisors are 100% domestic. They are objective advocates, so they are licensed insurance agents, so to speak, but they are compensated by VIA benefits separately and neutrally of what plan individuals enroll in. So there's no advantage or benefit to them to enroll people in a particular plan. And I think that that's really important because it can give you the confidence that the advisor really has the retiree's best interest at heart and not the plan that might be compensating them. And so we do cultural training so that they understand, what kind of service our retirees and their spouses have spent their lifetimes doing for the United Methodist Church. And these advisors can provide education. They can help you understand the difference between plan and then really, help from everything from choosing the plan, deciding whether you want dental or vision plans, and then getting you over to that enrollment specialist to get enrolled. Next slide, please. This is actually a very recent testimonial from a retiree in the Mountain Sky Conference. And this is just something that individual shared with her benefits officer, just that the people at VIA Benefits are easy to work with and they saved her a lot of time, making sure that her doctor was eligible and making sure that her medications were covered. And so she felt like it was reassuring and that she felt confident and appreciated the efforts. And so I think that overall, this is absolutely what we see from the retirees that participate in VIA Benefits. And if by chance somebody has an experience that isn't positive, you have a host of individuals at the conference and at WestPath and at VIA Benefits willing to go to bat and willing to make it right. Just wanted to share that, because this is a little bit of a different arrangement, because it's not a group plan that everybody just automatically gets enrolled in, there is some added responsibility for the retiree to actually choose a plan. But remember, the retiree has help doing that. They also have to actually pay the premium every month. Hopefully, being able to set up an auto payment makes that a little bit easier, but that is definitely something that retiree has to do to remain enrolled in the plan. And then request reimbursement from the HRA, which again can be done automatically, but it's an important thing. If you want to get the money back from the conference, you have to actually request the reimbursement. And then I like to emphasize it's important that the retirees and spouses, if they have questions, that they reach out for assistance, hopefully to VIA Benefits directly, but if not, to the conference or WestPath, so that we can get you to the right place. Your conference will determine who's eligible, and including who's eligible for a health reimbursement account, and they will fund the health reimbursement account. And then they will also send the initial information over to WestPath of who needs to be transitioned from the group plan, as well as sending future information to WestPath about, who's retiring and who's becoming newly eligible for Medicare. And then hopefully this fall we can host some informational sessions. My fingers are crossed that maybe we can do those in person. We weren't able to do that last year. If they end up being virtual, that worked very well well, but it would be nice to be back together again if that's an option this fall. And then via benefits, oops, I'm going to have you go back. Sorry, I have a couple more points on that. Via benefits will go and reach out individually to every retiree and spouse, set up an appointment so that you can choose a plan that's the right fit. And then they set up, administer the HRA. And then when we have those sessions, hopefully in person, but if not virtually, the via benefits expert will actually be present to deliver that information and answer questions. So if I sound knowledgeable, which I hope I do, the via benefits folks are even more knowledgeable than I. And then WestPath does provide that additional layer of support to your conference during the transition and ongoing. And it's also, you also have our customer service team to help if for whatever reason an individual didn't get the answer or the help that they needed from via benefits. And then we manage the relationship ongoing with via benefits and have done so for basically a decade now. And so, you know, we have, I like to think, a lot of influence and ability to make things right if they don't go that way on their own, which they most of the time do. So moving on to the next slide, this is a bit about the timeline. So we've already met with your Board of Pensions to talk through modeling and help them understand the program. And today, of course, we're meeting with you all to just share some details, and then we'll be seeking approval at annual conference in June. Hoping that everything goes well, in August or September, we'll host those informational workshops with the conference. And then in September, via benefits will begin outreaching directly to the retirees and spouses who are transitioning to start setting up those appointments. And then the appointments start usually like the second week of October, and they go through the end of the year. And they have a no retiree left behind philosophy. So we have our full list of people that we need to contact. And as that list dwindles and it gets to be, you know, a certain number of people who haven't been contacted yet, those names are provided to the conference so that we can make sure that between the conference and WestPath and via benefits that we are connecting with everybody who needs to be connected with. Next slide, please. So, you know, I just want to assure you all that WestPath, the conference, via benefits, we all have a vested interest to make sure that nobody is left behind during this. Some people will be like, okay, this is great. I'm going to choose a plan. I'm going to have the one that fits best for me, and they'll feel great about it. Some people will feel nervous about it. Wherever retirees and their spouses are on that spectrum, there will be support from a variety of groups just to make sure that you all have what you need to get into a plan that's a good fit and to know how to pay for it and to know how to get reimbursed for it. My last slide is just a question slide. So Mike, I don't know if you have anything, Mike or Anna, if you have anything that you guys would like to add or if there are any questions from the group.
Kelly, I'd have a couple things that I'd like to add. You know, two things. You know, number one, as far as the dollar amounts for the HRA, so the conference is committed to providing the same dollar amount in the HRA as we are currently subsidizing for the group plan. That means that retirees with 30 years of service or more and their spouses would each receive $1,692 each per year. Retirees that have from 20 to 29 years of service and their spouses would each receive $864 per year. So that's the same amount dollar-wise as we're currently doing under the Humana group plan. The second thing that I'd like to highlight is something just to piggyback on what you said, Kelly, as far as nobody left behind. You know, we're committed to supporting our retirees throughout this change. Retirees, to your point, will not be left to fend for themselves. They won't be left behind. And that bears repeating because I think it is so important in this type of transition. You know, when we were going through this, my mom is, she's 79 and she's widowed. And I was wondering, how would my mom respond? How would my mom go through the transition? What would be my thoughts if this was my mom that I had to work with? And I think that put it in a perspective for me that I know that there's support to get her to through the transition. I know that there's plenty of support, and I know from the conference that that it's a good thing, that it can be beneficial, it can be a cost savings for her, and if this was my mom in the situation, I would be for it as well, knowing that there's plenty of support. And that's one of the things that I want to communicate to our retirees as well, that not just via benefits, but the conference is going to make sure that nobody is left behind and do everything in our power to ensure a smooth transition. I'm looking at the chat and I'm not seeing any questions come through the chat just yet. I know it's a lot of information.
Mike, I either did an amazing job or I confused everyone, or maybe a blend of the two.
Yeah, I have a question, if I may.
Of course.
My name's Fred Grimm, and my experience with systems is that the simpler the system, the more efficient it is. And I'm baffled by the idea of the retiree paying and then getting reimbursed. It's something doesn't seem logical there to me. Why don't they get reimbursed first and then pay? Or
so those are great questions. We definitely. So I want to acknowledge that it's different, right? And that's probably it's probably a little bit challenging to kind of wrap your head around how it works and how it works for you personally. So there are legal requirements with the HRA. The IRS dictates how an HRA can work. And that's why, unfortunately, it is a reimbursement account and you can't be reimbursed for something that you didn't pay for. It's the documentation of the expense that is required for the reimbursement. So that's why the order is necessary in order for the plan to be compliant. And I think that the simplicity, where I hope you find the simplicity and where I hope that everybody who's currently enrolled finds the simplicity is in the auto setup, right? Like once the Via Benefits individual helps set up the plan such that it can automatically be paid and automatically be reimbursed, then basically it forms that cycle where, other than the first month where you have to kind of come up with that first month's premium, you're basically every month you're able to pay the next month's premium with the reimbursement from the last month. And so you always know that will be coming and that reimbursement will come before that next round of premium has to be paid. And I don't pretend that doesn't take folks some time to get used to. What I want to assure you is that the 9,000 people who came before you, many of them probably had that same concern, but they overall have felt like it's something that once they got it set up, that it really has worked for them.
Kelly, this may be, I don't know if this is a question for you or another response, Bill Brownson speaking. As I was thinking about this, the presumption is that a majority of the HRA balance would go toward paying a premium. But not everybody's premiums will be as much as what goes into the account. So then people are left with a choice about, for what else do I choose to get reimbursed for? And in most plans today, you have co-pays or doctor's visits until you reach your maximum out of pocket. So those aren't being reimbursed today. But speak a little bit about what expenses qualify above and beyond normal routine things about which someone might say, I'm not going to go through the hassle of getting reimbursed for $10 office visits here, $20 there. I have a major issue coming with dental or vision that I think I'm going to apply most of it to, as an example.
That's a great question, Bill. And so the options, that's part of where the flexibility comes in, right? So if I do have money left over after I pay my premium, and depending on what you choose as far as your premium, you may or may not, right? Like some folks could choose $0 Medicare Advantage plans, and all of their expenses will be after going to the doctor or getting tests. And then they may choose to have most of those reimbursed because they haven't paid anything in premium. But if you choose a Medicare supplement plan that doesn't have a lot of out-of-pocket expense and you only pay $10 here and $10 there for medications or doctor's visits, I think Bill's point is excellent. You may say, hey, I have some extra, like maybe I have $100 extra or $200 extra for the year, but I'm not going to submit every $10. Instead, I'm going to wait until I need, to get my partial replaced or my root canal. Hopefully nobody needs that, but we know that everybody does. So, those are some costly expenses that you may be able to save up some money for in the HRA and then be able to use them for the more costly expense. The other thing that we see people do is, if you're not using the full amount for premium, maybe your spouse needs, has more needs, right? Like you'll have a joint account with covered spouses. And so like maybe one spouse really doesn't need to use their full amount for their premium, but the other spouse could use more of it because they have more medical expenses. So that's another option that offers additional flexibility. Or if you know that 2 years from now, you're going to need a knee replacement and you want to kind of stockpile as much as you can for when you have that knee replacement so you can cover those out-of-pocket expenses, you can do that as well. So that's kind of where that flexibility comes in. And when we did the modeling with the Board of Pensions, we saw that many people, the majority in fact, could choose plans that overall would end up costing them less than the current Humana plan overall is costing when you looked at premium plus the out-of-pocket expenses plus pharmacy expenses. So there's potential for people to save money.
So there's some
I have a
questions
couple-
in the chat.
Yeah.
You want to
I was
start
going to say, can I
getting
read,
in a few of them?
those?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the Humana, the explanation of benefits always indicates the insurance pays less than the charge. Will the discounts be applied to these individual plans? Often the discount is really based on what Medicare discounts, and then the Medicare supplement plan, similar to your Humana plans today, pays based on like what Medicare has already discounted. And so Medicare usually drives what the discount is, but yes, that will still apply to plans that you buy through individual market in addition to the group. So that you're not going to pay more for services because you are leaving the Humana plan. The next question is whether payment and reimbursement is monthly only, or can you opt to pay and be reimbursed on an annual mode? I suppose that some insurance companies would allow you to prepay for the whole year. I don't see it happening commonly. And so I think that most of the time we see it happening monthly, but if you are able to get the insurance company to accept your money for the whole year, then you should be able to submit that full amount for reimbursement. And if I inadequately or misunderstand your question, please speak up or send it back in the chat for another round and we'll try again. So it says other HRAs have a debit card to use. Will this have a card system? And it will not. I see the HRAs with the debit cards happening more likely or more typically on the active plan side for non-Medicare side. I think the biggest reason that there isn't a debit card with this is because, like Bill said, the vast majority of folks will use their HRA to reimburse premium. And then it's an easy, setup of auto pay and auto reimbursement. But for this particular arrangement, there isn't a debit card. If that was an interest, a widespread interest, I think Westpac would be happy to advocate for that with VIA benefits. What motivated the decision to change plans? Is it okay if I ask Mike and Anna and Bill to chime in on that?
Sure. Good question. I would say a couple things. Number one, choice. And of course, Kelly mentioned, many hundreds of different options. It's our goal and our hope that retirees will have a few excellent options. There's, having too much and not having enough. And we want to give them just the right amount of really great options that they can use to right size their healthcare. One size does not fit all anymore. And we've learned that in other industries. So choice is number one and cost is number two. So we had an impact analysis done, and roughly 98% of our retirees will be better off financially going with an HRA model. And number three, I would say sustainability as well. When you're a part of a group plan, you're tied to the premiums of that group plan. In an HRA model, we won't be tied to the premiums of one carrier, but the competition will drive those premiums. So I think for me, those are three: choice, cost, and sustainability. And I don't know if Bill or Anna want to add any.
Yeah, let me add to that, Mike. We know that for retirees who are in Humana, many of you really like the plan. What you may not know is you've got some colleagues who opted not to be in the plan because where they lived, it was just too much of a hassle to do that. I see we've got a couple of people on the call who live in Florida. There are a couple of counties in Florida that are notoriously difficult for engaging that. I fully expect we'll have some retirees that come back into the fold when they've got an option to go with something other than Humana. So I just want to expand on the choice piece. The other is about sustainability, is not just about premiums. There's been a lot of conversation about why are we doing this now? Why are we going in this direction? The truth is, every single year, the Board of Pension reviews its insurance policies. In fact, I don't know when it would be, but if we didn't go to HRA, we're not going to be with Humana forever either. The Humana plan won't stay the same forever. The differences in costs aren't going to be the same. So the absence of going to an HRA model is not no future change, to kind of put that into perspective. And I think the other thing is, and I think I can say this without being pejorative, there are some people on this call who have been around this annual conference a very long time. You know that we have been working on fully funding and coming alongside our retirees for 2-3 generations. And we are there. We are fully funded on pension. We are fully funded on retiree healthcare. And if we can come up with a way in which we can look to the future and say that we are there with confidence, then we'll have some capacity for the board to actually take on some things they haven't taken on yet with regard to clergy benefits. So I think it all comes together. One last thing I'd say, Mike, is for people who astutely listen at annual conference during the Board of Pension report, and I'll assume that's not a high percent, but nevertheless, if you were listening closely, you'll know that the board has been indicating this is a direction it's likely to go for a few years. So, you know, we've understood with other annual conferences, and now 28 there going before us, that it kind of makes sense to do that. I want to say one more thing, if I could. It's maybe in response to a question that's been asked later, is about reimbursement. It strikes me, and Kelly, maybe you can add to this, that if the reimbursement, if the plan choice fulfills the conference's funding of the premium, there's not a lot of reimbursement to do. You've got your 12 payments, and you've covered the cost of the conference contribution toward the HRA. If you go with a low premium, you might have more reimbursements to request, but you actually have choice in how many reimbursements you request, given the balance that you have left available in the HRA. Is that fair? So if someone is, for example, purchases a plan that's $150 a month, I forget, Mike, what was the number you gave for 30 years of service? What was the number?
The premium?
Yeah.
The HRA would be $1,692.
Which is how much per month?
$141.
So if somebody bought a plan for $141 a month, they would exactly come out at the funding level, and there'd be no subsequent reimbursements to request.
And Bill, I would add one other thing is, you know, over the years, when we've done our informational sessions with retirees, one of the things that I've consistently heard is we're not really thrilled with the dental piece. The dental is preventive only. Get your x-rays and your screenings and whatnot. This will give retirees an opportunity to buy up on the dental side if they so choose, which I think could be a great benefit for them.
Absolutely. And the other thing I wanted to share, because in the chat it does say, reimbursement was a hassle. So let's say that there is a handful of folks who have plenty of money left over in their HRA after they are reimbursed for their premium, they're submitting regular claims. If it's a hassle and it's not going well, then I hope that you notify us at West Catholic, that you call our health team and that you tell them that you're having trouble getting reimbursed, because then what we can do is advocate on your behalf, because it shouldn't be a hassle to get reimbursed. It's your money. It's money that the conference has allotted to you. And so if it is a hassle, which I hope it won't be, and it's not what I've heard about VIA benefits in particular, that we will be there to make sure that it gets taken care of and it's less of a hassle for you.
And I might say that while the emphasis has been nobody will be left alone, nobody will be left behind on enrollment, that is true post-enrollment also. This is not simply about getting to a place January 1 where everybody has coverage in place. These resources and these dedicated experts who know the United Methodist Church well are going to continue to be available to assist. And of course, we've got conference staff and we have WestPath. There are lots of layers of folks to make sure nobody is left alone, nobody is left behind.
Somebody also pointed out on the chat, it's not an HSA. That is correct. It's not a health savings account. It does have, you can continue to roll it over from year to year, so you don't lose the money that you don't use. You are able to continue to roll it over. The main difference is that if both the husband and wife are deceased, then the money reverts back to the conference instead of to heirs. So that's really the major difference between the HRA and the HSA.
Those of you that are in the active plan, HSAs are primarily for people who are pre-Medicare in the way that employers fund.
In fact, you can't contribute to an HRA once you're Medicare eligible.
Correct.
Or an HSA, if I messed that up. You can't contribute to an HSA once you're Medicare eligible.
Yeah, I see your question here. If I'm understanding correctly, the 141 that Mike quoted as a monthly premium, that's just one example of a plan that you could have selected. So that 141 per month, unless you're talking about the conference's contribution into that. So if you could provide some clarity, that would be helpful.
Do you want me to take that, Mike, or do you want to take it?
So the question is, will the 141 per month, the HRA contribution that the conference is going to provide into the account, will it remain constant or change from year to year? And Bill, piggyback on me, but I see this as something that the board, similar to the past service rate, will review annually each year. Decide if any increases need to be taken, and maybe go an every other year with the past service rate. But I would imagine it would be reviewed every year. Bill?
No, I can completely concur. A lot of folks don't appreciate all of the decisions, and I might be frozen, so I'm getting an unstable internet connection signal. But a lot of folks don't appreciate how many decisions the Board of Pension makes every single year, usually in August and September, as it relates to the coming plan year, both for active and retirees. So the board will continue to make decisions about funding levels and make changes to it going forward.
Good question.
And I'll just share that, from the other, 20 some annual conferences that have done this, we've seen some that have kept the contribution the same. We've seen some that review it and add to it every year. And have seen some that review it and maybe add to it periodically. The nice thing about this individual market, I share that it's fairly competitive financially, is that you don't usually see the same increases from year to year as you do in the group Medicare market. So there may be an opportunity, again, for the conference, if they choose to continue to increase at some level, to increase at a slower level than they would have had to if they maintained their group plan.
And I would like everybody on the call to know, when we were discussing this last year, I reached out to 3 other annual conferences, basically to interview them That's my HR background. Just to interview them and get their experience. What were some of the pros and the cons, and what was the overarching, theme? Would you do it again? And each one said yes. Each one said yes, they do it again. It was good for their conference. It was good for their retirees. It was I think said a lot to me. Kelly's talked a lot about all the other annual conferences. We're definitely not the tip of the spear in this, but it's good to know that there's a lot of folks that have gone before us and done so, did it well, and are pleased with the decision that they made.
I do want to just reiterate, Kelly, what you said about the HRA. It can accumulate, but it's not something that goes to one's heirs. Just as an example, I'm doing this call from Otterbein, Pemberville. I had my mother with me this weekend for Mother's Day. She's in assisted living. And when I reviewed my father's retired school administrator, so state pension plan. So when we reviewed her plan for this year and took a look at her needs, we actually chose a $0 premium Medicare Advantage that made the most sense given her sense of things. And she has then the capacity to take on other expenses that she wouldn't otherwise be able to. So in that case, and we also know this, a lot of times when our pastors retire, for a period of time, they get healthier. I don't know if that surprises anyone, but you can go quite some time with having really good health experience. And if you have a few years where you have said, look, $75 a month is plenty for my plans, what I do, you could accumulate a fair amount and accommodate that major dental matter or the thing that's not particularly covered by the plan that you're in and still be able to cover that. So I think that shouldn't be overlooked. The roll forward balance accumulation should not be overlooked in that regard.
Good questions. Anything else? Want to be aware of our time. We're at 3:47. Any other questions on the HRA? I know it's a lot of material, a lot to take in.
Of course, the good news is for those who are actually eligible for the transition, there will be fall workshops and lots more information coming. So you don't have to, if you fall into the category of a transitioning group, you don't need to memorize it all today.
And I might assume, Kelly, that also would apply to folks who maybe are retiring. So we've got some folks right on the bubble, right? And I don't know if that'll be a separate group or they'll participate in the rollover group, but we'll pay special attention to that group also.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would imagine, Mike, I can't imagine that Mike, Bill, Anna, that you wouldn't let people who are close to retirement attend those workshops if they wanted to attend them, even if they don't need to attend them, right? And then there are other options for educating, like the new class of retirees each year that we can partner with the conference. Like you said before, Bill, this is not a one and done. We get everybody over to Via Benefits and then we, wash our hands and say, see you later. And, it's an ongoing support from both the conference and WestPath in addition to Via Benefits.
There's a good question that came up, Kelly, about the range of price. I'll offer, you heard me say, my mother and I reviewed her needs and we started with a $0 Medicare Advantage, but on the high end,
it really can vary based on age. It does get more expensive as you get older, and there can be plans that are in the $200 range. I would say that most, like Mike said earlier, we did the analysis, and the vast majority of retirees and spouses can choose a plan at all ages. Can choose a plan that is going to cost them less overall than what you have today through Humana. Whether it's less in premium or, maybe the premium is a little bit more, but then it's anticipated less out of pocket. So remember, the whole equation is, how much you pay in premium, how much you pay out of pocket, and then how much you have in your HRA or that the conference supports. And so the awesome thing is that VIA benefits advisors look at that whole picture and help you pick a plan that is the right fit. Somebody asked about whether we'll Zoom the workshops. What we've done in the past, and of course we're in a whole new world now, so you pretty much have to offer a virtual option now in addition to an in-person option. But especially for folks out of state, what we've done in the past is we've had a recorded version. So even if we have all in-person workshops, we've also partnered with VIA Benefits in the past to have a recorded version of the workshop that just doesn't have the Q&A portion. So that way we don't record people's personal questions, but we still have all of the important information. So there will be some way for folks who can't attend in person to get the information in the fall.
Good questions. Anything else on the HRA?
I might just add that in West Ohio, it's kind of unusual. I see Cindy Garnes on the line, and we have some others who have been down the path of major changes for health insurance in the past. But in recent years, perhaps the last 15, it's been unusual that we use annual conference as the means by which to have a conversation about a particular plan. Typically, that's come as a result of the Board of Pension carrying out its duties, typically in July or August or September. So this really is an annual conference context for this information exchange. And there'll be subsequent meetings that are very focused on just this aspect of clergy benefits for just this group of eligible employees. So I think a helpful, we chose to really focus on this. And this is an annual conference matter with subsequent information coming after that.
Great. What I would like to do, since we only have a few minutes left, is just talk briefly about that past service rate increase. See if you have any questions about that, and then open it up to any questions about the recommendation that you have before our time comes to a close. So as I mentioned earlier, Board of Pensions is proposing a rounded 2% increase to the past service rate, or PSR, from $611 per year of credited service to $623. Good news about this is there are no advance contributions necessary that we need to submit to WestPath, and the plan remains fully funded at 101%. It is our hope that this modest increase will help our 397 participants receiving that PSR-based benefit. So we have 177 retirees and then 220 spouses, contingent annuitants, for 397 total that'll receive that rounded 2% increase. We did not do one last year in September when we met. And so for 2022, it's part of the recommendation to increase that slightly. Any questions about the PSR or any other components of the legislation? Why 2%? I think a couple things, Bill, you might want to piggyback as well. 2%, I think, to keep up with the cost of living, with inflation, I think, number one. Number two, it keeps us fully funded. And number three, what I mentioned earlier, no advance contributions were necessary because of our funding status. So I think that's where 2% comes in.
I think that's right. Let me add to that. Mike's referenced twice, no advance contribution. What does he mean by that? A few years ago, WestPath indicated that under general conference legislation, conferences that add to their PSR have to pay for that upfront. So if we wanted, let me just go out on a limb, and let's say we wanted to increase the PSR by 10%. We'd probably get about a $1.2 million bill and have to pay it. So that what we know is that we've got the capacity to do that. So we have to pay for it upfront when we accelerate the rates. The second thing is, yes, it is around, it's consistent with cost of living. It's consistent with equitable compensation changes for minimum comp for active folks serving there. And the third thing we need to keep in mind is that while there are somewhere just under 400 people who are receiving as part of their retirement pre-82, each year that passes, a majority of retirement income is derived from subsequent plans. MPP, CRSP 2007, CRSP 2014. So while it's material, it's important, particularly for any lay people listening, to remember that fewer and fewer retirees' retirement income is predominantly or exclusively based on the pre-82 plan, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Bill. Any other questions or comments? I hope this has been helpful for you. I know we've shared a lot of good information.
One other thing, just so a lot of you know this, but maybe to prevent future queries, the last page of the recommendation is always the retiree housing clergy exclusion resolution. So presumably when the recommendation gets passed, so will the exclusion. You know where you can either get it from your book of reports for your tax purposes, or there's the convenient site on the convenient page on the website where you can capture it for your retiree housing exclusion as well, for those of you who are clergy.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Kelly for joining us. A lot of good information. Glad you were able to attend. Thank Bill, thank Anna as well. And if there aren't any other questions, Tim, is there anything else we need to do? No? Okay. Great. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.